So for the workflows, I think this is the agenda which we have. We will quickly touch upon this PR topic as well, for the purchase requisitions. How do we rise the workflows? So that because this is more of a beginner guide. Already we discussed about the concepts in for the purchase order. So let me quickly jump into Dynamics 365 screen. So let's say in case if you want to rise the workflow for purchase requisition, then if you have to go to procurement and sourcing module. But in this case, we do not have a activate change management control. If you go to procurement and sourcing parameter, so in the general section as well, you can see this is only change management for purchase orders, and this is not necessarily for the purchase requisitions. And so even there is a section for purchase requisitions, but that has no configuration related to workflow. So for the purchase orders, you need to make sure that you enable the change management, but for the purchase requisitions, which is not required. So which means if you go to procurement and sourcing module, purchase requisitions, all purchase requisitions, by default for any requisition which you rise, workflows are mandatory. So but you can decide whether based on the conditions you want to auto approve it, or there are some conditional based approvals where you want to follow the escalation paths, or but you can feel free to decide. But there are no specific configurations which governs the workflow for purchase requisitions. So similar to the purchase order, here also you just provide a name. So we discussed a lot in detail about the creation of the purchase requisition in the procurement and sourcing series. So I'm not going to cover those as well. Probably I will share the link for the playlist in the video's description. So if you provide the item number, and then once when you hit the save button, that's where this workflow option will be enabled. So once if it is saved, then you can go ahead and submit the purchase requisition for approval as well. So these are the two major documents in the source to pay processes where you use the workflows. Apart from that, you also have the invoice approval processes where you can for any of the accounts payable related to vendor, you can follow a traditional workflow process similar to what we are discussing right now. So right now the document status is in draft, and I can very well go ahead and submit this for approval. You get a workflow instruction here. I will also explain you how to control the workflow instructions, and let me go ahead and submit it. If you want, you can provide any comment. So you can see the status of this document is in review. So at any point in time, as a user whom I'm acting as a user called Julia Funderburg, who is also the admin user for Dynamics 365. So as a user, I can go ahead and check the workflow history, and like I said in the episode number 1, we can quickly recall this workflow as well as an end user. So if I recall, then the status will go back to draft. So we saw let me just recall this workflow. So the status will be updated back to draft. Of course, this is primarily triggered by the batch job which is available in the backend. Let me also quickly show you. If you go to system administration, GloveSolve, then inquiries, these are the batch jobs. So all the batch jobs of Dynamics 365 will be available over here, and if you type, you have to make sure that it contains the filter which begins with workflow, and among these, I think predominant of or in waiting status. If you look at workflow message processing, workflow line notification, workflow due date processing, so these are primarily the 3 batch jobs. So these are already in waiting status. So if it is in the ended or withhold status, that's where you have to go ahead and change the status for this batch job as well. So once you change the status, then the batch job will run in the backend. So this is already in waiting status, so we do not need to make any changes. Let's go back to procurement and sourcing module, and then let's check the purchase requisitions, all purchase requisitions, and then you can see the purchase requisition which we created is now brought back to draft because we just recalled the purchase requisition. So this is the basic actions which are performed by the document owner and the approver who is actually approving the document. So if they want to approve, the once I submit, like I shown in the episode number 1, you can go ahead and reassign the user and then start approving the documents as well. So this workflow history, you will be able to view all the details. These are basically the tracking details, where in the next episode when we configure the workflow elements, where the elements will primarily define the various steps which need to be performed in order to approve the purchase requisition or purchase order. So in this case we do not have multiple steps, but once the batch job is completed, you will have the users here, and let me see if the batch job is completed. Typically it takes some time. So meanwhile, I will also tell you that this workflow is something which is not specific to procurement and sourcing module alone. Let's say if you go to any of the modules, like the accounts payable, let's take the example of accounts payable, and under setup, any workflow will be primarily under the menu item of setup for the modules. So for the setup, if you go to accounts payable workflow, then you can see the current active workflow. This is primarily for vendor invoice journal posting, and any journal which need to be posted, primarily this workflow configuration will come into place. And if you want to create some new, then these are the out of the box workflows which are primarily supported for the accounts payable. So similarly, if you go to accounts receivables as well, you will be able to view the out of the box workflows. Let me collapse all, setup, accounts receivable workflows. So here as well, you will be able to view the various workflows for like customer payment workflow, whether you want to monitor that through an approval mechanism, and you want the reviewer to kind of review those details, then you have these workflows need to be in place. And I think this is true for even for inventory management, like journals. When you are posting the journals, for example, let me collapse all, and where there are various journals. Probably when we discuss in detail about the journals, we will discuss this in detail, like movement journals. These are various journals which are posted in the inventory management. And if you want to have personalized workflows for these as well, then you have to configure it in the setup, and where you ask the user to kind of submit it for approvals whenever there is an inventory adjustment is happening, or you post a movement journal. So for all those, you will be able to kind of define the workflow for like inventory adjustments, for counting. Let's say in the warehouse you have a counting process which is happening, and you do not want to post the counted actual quantity without approval from the warehousing manager. So the workflow is basically, what I'm trying to say is, this workflow concept is not just restricted within the procurement and sourcing module. This is something which is used across the Dynamics 365 SEM suite of apps and the modules. So that's the gist of information which I wanted to give. So let me go back to procurement sourcing module, purchase requisitions, and then let me go ahead and then see whether the workflow batch job has been completed or not. I guess this is completed, and now I can see that very well the work items are assigned, and at any point in time you can view the tracking details for each and every line items. And now if you look at the work item, I can reassign this user. And so now in this case, Julia Funderburg is basically an admin user, so I'm just assigning it as an admin, and then I'm reassigning this as well. But I'm not sure about the approval criteria. We will discuss about this in detail in the next episode of workflow elements, where because you have to define the condition in which where you want a single approver, or you want all the users, both Inga and Sarah, to approve this workflow. So there are related configurations with respect to this. So now this is got reassigned to Julia Funderburg, and you will also be able to see that in the tracking details. You can see that delegated from Inga to Julia. So now Julia has to take that action. So at any point in time, if the user comes back to the same page, now if I am Julia, I am going to approve this requisition. I can see the requisition number. We will discuss about how do we configure this workflow instructions as well in the workflow editor, not inside Dynamics 365. So let me go ahead and approve this, and then I'll simply click the approve button. So let's see, I'm not sure about the configuration for this workflow, but if there is a single approver, if it is enough to approve this document, then this status will be updated from in review to approved. So that's great. I think the document now is in the approved status. I think now with this purchase requisition, either we can convert it into RFQ or convert that into a purchase order. So this is how typically the approval workflow is used in purchase orders, what we have seen in the episode number 1, and in the episode number 2 now we saw how it works in purchase requisitions as well. But this is not, I'm once again iterating the fact, but this is not specific to purchase orders and purchase requisitions. These approval workflows are common across multiple modules. Let's say even if you go to general ledger and then under general journal setup, you have the general ledger workflows where you can configure dedicated workflows for journal ledger entries. So ledger daily journal workflows, or you can configure ledger allocation journal workflows. So these workflows are primarily used in order to manage the approval process and the flow of documents within Dynamics 365. So this is a very short episode. I hope the concept is clear now. I think in the next episode number 3 we will discuss in detail about the workflow elements and how do we configure the participants, users, and the basic settings. I think we will get deeper into the workflow editor workspace. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel D365 Talks or follow my profile in LinkedIn. See you soon in the episode number 3 for workflows.